Welcome back. So what's the difference between a drummer and a professional drummer? Well, I would argue it's the balance, and it's the understanding and really owning in your bones the difference between the strong and the weak beats. So that's what's coming up next in this lesson. Let's get to it. Now before we get started, if your goal is to get better at drums, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. So you've probably heard those terms before, strong beats, weak beats. I get a lot of questions about this and a lot of confusion from students when we start talking about it. And I think the main confusion comes with the terminology. Strong beats, weak beats. They sound like two very different things. And unfortunately, the big mistake with this is that the terminology of strong versus weak translates to the execution or the playing. Basically, what I'm here to tell you is that when you're playing strong beats or weak beats, there should be no difference in how they feel. Most people guide to one E enda, one E enda, one E enda, one E enda. They feel the quarter note on the strong beat. But of course, the quarter note doesn't always have to be on the strong beat. So if you syncopated the quarter note and played it on all the different parts of the beat, it gives you a good sense of finding that weak versus strong balance. But you got to do that without changing how you feel it. In other words, if I do this, you should be able to tell what part of the beat I'm on there. Now your ear is going to say 1, 2, 3, but how do you know it's not E enda 1, E enda 2, E enda 3, E, or enda 1, E, enda 2, E, enda 3, E, enda, or a 1, E, a 2, E, a 3, E, a 4, E, a. See what I mean? The flow or the feel of what I'm playing doesn't change based on how I'm hearing it in the count. So basically to develop that, I just had to adjust my counting to feel strong no matter where I start. 1 E enda, 1 E enda, 1 E enda, E enda 1, E enda 1, E enda 1, E enda 1, enda 1 E enda 1 E enda, a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. You do that enough and it starts giving you a good sense of how to feel the strong versus weak beats the same way. So basically what I'm trying to tell you is that if you're a professional drummer, there is no difference between how you feel strong beats versus weak beats. And that really is the secret. So let's dive in here. What are strong beats? What are weak beats? And there is some context here in terms of the time signature, the tempo you're at, and the way you're counting the beat. So here's what I mean by context. The context of weak and strong beats has a lot to do with tempo. For example, if I'm playing a straight 8th feel, but a double time or very fast tempo, downbeats are strong and upbeats are weak. If you're in the context of a swing time type of beat, like a jazz beat, the downbeats, again, the counts, 1, 2, 3, 4, are going to be your strong beats. The let of the triplet, one triplet, is going to be the next strongest beat, and the weakest beat is going to be the trip, the middle of the triplet, one triplet. But for this video, we're going to focus more on a regular or medium tempo. That way we can take advantage of studying all 4 16th note counts. The 1 and the end being your strong beats, the E and the being your weak beats. Let's start with strong beats first. A strong beat is any beat or count that falls on a downbeat. For example, if you're in normal 4/4 time and you're counting 16th notes, which is a very common way to count, 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1. Your downbeat or your anchor beats would be your 1, 2, 3, 4. That's your quarter note. That's where it feels the strongest. That's where home is whenever you come out of a fill or wherever you feel the time, or what a non-drummer would clap to along with the music. So your downbeats or the numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, those are your quintessential strong beats. Now I would argue that numbers are the strongest and all the other counts get weaker from there. So your next strongest beat, if you were in 4/4 time and counting 16th notes, would be the end, the middle of the beat. 1 end, 2 end, 3 end, 4 end. Now they also call that the upbeat. Now that has nothing to do with going up or playing up in any way. They're called upbeats because of basic conducting. If I was to conduct 8th notes, I'd go down on the 1, up on the end. 1 end, 2 end. That's where I think the term downbeat and upbeat came from. So basically you can play down on an upbeat. Watch, I'll prove it. 1 end. Okay, so your strongest beat would be your number, your 1, 2, 3, 4. Your next strongest beat is going to be your end, the upbeat. So 1 and end I would consider the strong beat if you're counting in 16 notes. That's 1 E and a. So your weak beats are going to be in between those counts. the E, which goes in between the 1 and the end, and the which goes in between the end and the 2. Now what I see with my students a lot of the times is an inability to really feel the weak beats confidently. And I think a lot of that is just due to environment and the music we listen to. Generally, we don't hear a lot of stuff accented on the weak beat. In fact, we have a name for that, a specific name for accenting the weak beat. It's called syncopation. So syncopation is when you play accents or note phrases that accentuate the weak beats. In this case, the E of the beat and the of the beat. Now what I'm here to tell you is professional drummers don't feel the E and the any differently than they feel the 1 in the end. But this doesn't come naturally and has to be developed. So one of the first things I do with a new student when they come in, I evaluate them based on how comfortably they feel the weak and the strong beats. And I do it with a very simple test. The strong beat, weak beat test. So if I went slowly on the strong beats, we're talking about 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. If we're clapping on the weak beats, we're talking about 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. Which is easy to do slow, sure, but it's when you get faster that all that balance starts unraveling. Now this generally works better at a faster tempo, so we're going to take it at 100 beats per minute. Now what I ask the student to do is just clap eighth notes on the strong beats. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Generally, they have no problem doing that. Then I have them clap the same exact eighth notes, but on the E and the so displaced over 1/16 note. That feels like this. Ready, go. So now I challenge you to pause this video, find yourself a metronome, and give yourself that test. 100 beats per minute on the metronome, give it a shot, and let's see how you do. Welcome back. Now if you pass the test, then I think you should give this video a like. And if you completely failed this test, I think you should be smashing that like button. Because either way, that's a really good litmus test for if you're a professional or not. Okay, great. So now that we got that out of the way, how do we apply it to the drums? Now there's a whole bunch of exercises you could do, but I'm going to share with you a couple of my favorites. Now this kind of practice I would put into the coordination category, because you want to get all your limbs involved. You want to work on that balance. The idea with understanding strong versus weak beats and syncopation in general is having balance. Not getting tightened up or locked up or screwed up or fallen apart or train wrecked whenever a weak beat accent or syncopated accent comes out of your playing. You know the feeling. You're playing on a gig. You go to do a fill, and it doesn't come out quite where you expected it to, and it totally crashes your playing. So you should be able to come out of that without crashing. Now, any drummer that studies with me knows that I'm a big fan of the fatback exercises, something I mentioned in the last lesson. The first time I heard about the fatbacks was from Gary Chafee's book, Time Functioning. That's part of his pattern series. And the fatback exercise in that book gives you every possibility of 4/16 notes in terms of where they play, rest, and hold. For example, if you play the 1, but then you hold the E and a, 1 E and a. So basically we have 16 options. 1 E and a, 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 and lastly, 1 E and a. And that's it. Pretty much all straight eighth drumming that's based on 16 notes are just combinations of those 16 phrases. So the idea would be to put some kind of displaced groove on top of all 16 of those examples. So I'm going to pick the simplest groove I could think of. Straight eighths on the ride cymbal, quarter notes on the hi-hat, backbeat of 2 and 4 on the snare drum. The caveat now is I'm going to take what I'm doing with my hands and displace it over a 16th note. So instead of this being on the one end, this is going to be on the E, That's going to put the snare drum on the E of 2 and the E of 4. 1, 2, ready, play. 1 E, 2 E, 3 E, 4 E, 1 E, 2 E, 3 E, 4 E, and 1. So that becomes my ostinato. That becomes the thing that I hold and keep consistent. Then I'm going to go ahead and take the bass drum through all the fatback possibilities. Hold up, did you get completely lost listening to and watching that exercise? Did your ear shift that weak beat to the strong beat? Did it sound like the metronome changed and moved to the off beat at some point? Well, let's rewind that entire example. But this time I'm going to help you out by counting 16 notes out loud. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1. Now that time should have been much better. And listening to me count should have helped you stay with the beat. Now my suggestion to you would be to go back to that first example and try to count the 16th notes out loud yourself. So that's going to wrap up this lesson. What exercises do you do to feel the strong versus the weak beats? I'm sure there's going to be a ton of these, so I'd love to see how you work it out in the comments below. Now, if you're new to my videos, remember to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you know when new lessons are dropping. If you dug this lesson, do me a favor, give me a like. That helps me grow the channel. If you know any drummers that you think might get something out of this, feel free to share it. Share it on your Facebook, share it on your Instagram, share it on Twitter. Blast it across your email list. Write the URL on a piece of paper and mail it to your friends. I'm Fenichel. Thanks for watching, and as always, remember, practice with purpose. Depending on the time signature you're in,